Hey everyone, welcome to the Digital Remodeler Podcast. We're so glad you've joined us today. And joining me is Jonathan Mast with Whitebeard Strategies. We're going to be taking a little deeper dive into the world of AI today, talking about some of the things that are happening in AI, how it can benefit you in your business, and really getting you focused on what's ahead in the AI driven universe that we all live in today. So, Jonathan, welcome. And tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get started.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on the show today, and I'm excited to chat about AI. As you know, that's a passion of mine. I love that and have really embraced it a lot this year. And I think, it's a great tool that can allow businesses to really achieve three main objectives in my mind. It's how I work with my clients. It's first, save time. AI has so many ways it can allow us as entrepreneurs and professionals to save time. The second area is to increase our margins. And if we went to the grocery store in the last week to buy groceries, we know that we need to increase our margins because everything's getting more expensive. And then the third thing, and this is probably the part that excites me the most, and it's probably a little odd, but to deliver more value to our clients. And the neat thing is Carl, with AI, no matter what business you're in, we can do all three of those simultaneously. When before in history have we ever been in a spot that we could actually increase our margins and deliver more value to clients? It happens very rarely. And I really think we're there right now. And I'm excited to have the opportunity to chat with you about that today.
All right, perfect. Well, glad to have you here. And yeah, it is a passion. This is one of the reasons I invited you on. I've watched your deep dive into AI, and I know that you've become a real student of it. And I think those of you listening today are going to find this of great value. So let's kind of start with the fundamentals. Let's talk about some of the platforms that are out there. You know, we hear these terms thrown around, Dalle and ChatGPT and Bard, Bing, Jarvis, Perplexity. Tell us about some of the platforms that are out there that people are using right now.
Happy to do so. Well, let's begin by describing and kind of categorizing them. So there's really a couple different categories of AI tools. There's your AI content creation tools, and those are mainly focused on text. You need it to proofread an email. You need it to write a social media post for you. You've got an email going back to a client. You just aren't sure how to word. It's a great tool for that. And there's really three main tools there. ChatGPT is the big gorilla that everybody talks about that gets all the press. And that's what came storming on the scene just over a year ago now. Google has another version of that called Bard. You'll learn through the interview. I'm not a huge fan of Bard other than in specific cases. I actually think Google got caught pretty flat-footed when it came to AI. And then there's a third called Claude by Anthropic. It's a direct competitor to ChatGPT. It's been invested in by, believe it or not, Google, as well as Amazon and some other companies. And then again, those three are really focused on text content creation. If you need to create it, whether that's again a marketing campaign, a blog post, social media, email. One of my favorite uses, by the way, is to create standard operating procedures. Those are the great tools to use for that. Then we've got our image generation tools, and those are tools that, just like they sound, are really focused on helping you create AI-generated images. And I got to say, they have really impressed me. They can do some amazing things. You can literally type out what you're looking for, or if you're on your phone, you can just speak it into the phone and say, here's what I want, and they're going to create images based upon that. The big player there is really twofold. One is Midjourney, and the other is called Dalle. Dalle is part of ChatGPT and Microsoft and OpenAI. By the way, Microsoft owns a big chunk of OpenAI. They offer Dalle for image generation and in different ways. Both do a good job. Midjourney is a separate application and does a very good job, but has a very quirky interface in that it actually uses something called a Discord server to feed into. They have added a website, but it still doesn't work the way you'd anticipate it does. Great tool, just a little bit of a learning curve to get into. Along with that, there are a number of others that I'm sure people in your audience may be passionate about, from Leonardo and a host of others that are out there. But that's really that image generation category. You mentioned Perplexity.ai. That is kind of in a unique category. It can do text, but it's really an AI-based search engine, And it's where I thought Google would go with AI. The neat thing about Perplexity is that you can go out to Perplexity and ask a question or do a search, and it gives you a response. And then it also gives you 6 to 10 websites to reference. And I really think that's where Google's headed with their new search generative experience and the type of things we're going to see, where when you actually ask a question, you get a response instead of just a list of websites to go to. And then there's a host of other tools out there that you mentioned from Jarvis and others. There's tons of video creation tools. They are getting pretty good, but they're not quite ready to replace you and I yet. But there's a lot of stuff out there. My recommendation for those that are scratching their heads and going, oh my goodness, this is just so much, start with the basics. Go to ChatGPT and just start using the free version to learn how it works and to figure it out. And then over time, as your interests and needs change or evolve, then start bringing in some of the other tools. But to get started with, both Claude and ChatGPT give free versions that do a very good job. Start with one of those and you'll learn a lot pretty quickly.
Perfect. And along those lines, just for, our audience to understand, what would be the benefit of at some point moving on to one of the paid versions, like especially with Chat GPT? I know that you'll see like a Chat GPT 3.5 or paid
Mhm.
version 4.0. What are kind of the big enhancements that a person gets if they do pay on a platform like Chat GPT?
Well, it's an interesting question. This weekend, I actually got asked that in my AI group, and it was like, is it worth the $20 investment? And my response was, I would give up pretty much everything other than food and shelter before I'd stop paying for that. My Netflix subscription, which I love, it's long gone before I stop paying for ChatGPT. What you get with that is easier to describe on ChatGPT than it is the others. So I'll start there. ChatGPT is going to give you access to their 4.0 model, which is their most current model. The free version is 3.5. It still does a lot of things really well, but its knowledge base is cut off about a year and a half ago. 4.0 is much more current. 4.0 also has with it the capabilities to search the internet, so it can actually, you can have it reference an article or something like that, read, summarize. I love it to summarize things. If I've got a long article that somebody recommended, instead of me reading it and taking 10 minutes, I'll often just feed the URL into ChatGPT and say, give me an executive summary. Then I can determine, do I want to take the time to read that or not? So it does a lot of things there that you don't normally get access to. And I do think, especially for business people, I think it's an absolute no-brainer to spend the $20 a month to get the access and the tools that it gives you. Claude also offers a package for $20 a month. I am a subscriber. I'm not exactly sure what I'm getting for it, to be candid with you. I really don't see any difference between the paid version and the pro. If you work for Anthropic and can tell me, please reach out. I'd love to know the difference. I want to support you, but I'm not sure it has the noticeable difference that it does with ChatGPT.
Okay, perfect. And that brings us really to another topic. You hear the term GPT. I see sometimes in your group this discussion about creating a GPT, and so if you could give us a little explanation of what really is a GPT. What are we talking about there?
I'd be happy to. So GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And I actually had to go look that up myself real quick because I don't have the wording quite right. But basically, it means that it's a model that's been trained on data to respond to your inputs. We call the inputs prompts, and obviously the responses are responses. Normally, when you hear somebody refer to a GPT as a topic or as an item, they're referring to a new rollout that happened in November, and ChatGPT rolled out the ability to create what are called custom GPTs. And those are really interesting in that now you're not reliant just upon the data that ChatGPT knows. Think of ChatGPT, by the way, as probably the world's broadest encyclopedia. They have knowledge on almost anything you can imagine, but they don't necessarily have knowledge on your company, Carl, or my company, and they certainly don't have knowledge on me as an individual because I'm not famous enough for that, and that's okay. But with a GPT model, a custom GPT, I can actually upload information about my company. I can upload our policies and our procedures, our values, all kinds of things like that. And I can instruct the GPT model to, before you use ChatGPT's general encyclopedic knowledge, use the specific knowledge that I've uploaded. And it really provides a huge opportunity for businesses to a simple case, if you can imagine giving your customer service team access to a custom GPT that was fully trained on all of your documentation, on all of your policies and procedures, on all of your values, had pre-programmed how to deal with a frustrated customer, how to request a testimonial and all that. And now your customer service team has that literally at their fingertips available to help them in resolving any customer issues or anything they're doing in their job.
Oh, excellent, excellent. And you broached into another topic, and this one is I think super critical. The importance of prompts. It seems like there's good prompts, bad prompts, and probably everything in between. But not all prompts are created equal. Would that be a fair statement?
It'd be a very fair statement. You've probably heard the phrase garbage in, garbage out, and that applies to computers in general, and it absolutely applies to AI. I think probably one of the most common things I hear, Carl, is people will reach out and go, I used it to write a social media post, and what it wrote was just garbage. And I'm like, well, what did you ask it to do? Well, I said, write me a social media post about the sun is shining outside. I'm like, well, you didn't give it any context. Where are you living? What month is it? What's going on? What are you trying to do? What makes it just like when you talk to a team member? And that's really how I encourage people to look at ChatGPT. And by the way, if I say ChatGPT, it really applies to Bard and Claude too. So, but it's hard to say all three of them all the time. If you're using ChatGPT and you're prompting it, talk to it just like you would a coworker. So if I'm working with you and collaborating with you, Carl, and we're going to try to write a social media post together, I'm probably going to share who's the audience, what is the topic I want to talk to, what's the overall tone that I want it to have, maybe even what opinion do I want it to share, or what education do I want it to give. And people seem to forget that, and they just go write me a social media post about looking in front of me about acoustical panels. Well, it doesn't know who you're trying to write it to. It doesn't know whether it's supposed to be in favor or against acoustical panels. Doesn't know it should talk about the kind that looks like eggshells or the stuff that looks like stripes, or if it's something totally different. So it's going to guess. And a lot of times it's going to guess wrong. It's going to be very general in nature. And you see a lot of that content out there because that's what a lot of people are doing. AI is very powerful if you prompt it well, but you need to talk to it much like you would talk to a coworker when you're requesting it to do things.
Okay, perfect. And with that, just you gave us a little sample there. Do you have a couple of just really quick, simple prompts that our audience could go try out for themselves, just to see, how that works?
Good question. I encourage most business people to start with the simplest in my mind, and that's find an email that you need to write today that you're just not sure you're getting the right tone on. Most of us are writing emails back and forth throughout the day, and one or more of them require us to ponder and reread and think. And sometimes we take the time and sometimes we don't. But take that email, write your response, and now go over to ChatGPT and paste it in and say, please proofread my response and improve it for two things: readability and comprehension. So again, basically you're going to say, please proofread the following email and improve for readability and comprehension. And then you just copy paste your email in. You will be absolutely amazed at how much better of an email it normally will create for you. Now, you still need to proofread it and you need to make sure it's right because that's not a lot of data to give it, but it's very good at writing professional, but not too stale type of conversation. And then as a follow-up to that, let's say it comes back and it just sounds too professional. Maybe I'm writing an email to you, Carl. I know you, and I'm going to be a bit more casual or friendly. I can say, thanks. Now try to write it in a more friendly tone. Carl's a friend of mine. And it will actually rewrite that email in a much friendlier and more conversational tone. And I think it's a great way to get started. The other thing I would add is I have a favorite, what I call prompt addendum. And that's it. People forget that ChatGPT, you can have a conversation with it. So whatever prompt you type in, anything you want to try, at the end of it, when you're done and you think you're ready to press enter, add this sentence. Please ask me any clarifying questions you need in order to give me the best response. By adding that to the end of your prompt, ChatGPT is now going to analyze what you asked it to do, and it's going to go, wow, I'm missing 3 pieces of information I should have. If you don't ask that question, it's going to just assume it has it, or it's going to make it up, or whatever. We actually call it hallucinations, much like drugs when it comes to that, because it just hallucinates, it guesses. But if we put that in there, please ask me any clarifying questions you need to get me the best response. It will now ask you any questions that it believes it needs to fill in information that you maybe didn't give it or didn't think to give it.
Oh, wow, that that right there, I think, is worth the price of admission, that one little line. So that's certainly something I'm gonna start applying. I like that. So let's talk, a little bit about you hit that topic of hallucinations. So how do we make
Mhm.
sure that our responses that we're getting back are really valid, they're accurate, they're correct information? What things should we be doing to, really quality control the responses that we're getting?
Good question. There are a couple things I recommend. One is the basic, is and that's proofread before you use. If you want to just copy and paste out of ChatGPT, you're going to sooner or later get bitten by it. Whether you're a student, you're trying to do it for a report, or you're in business, it's going to make a hallucination, or it's just going to get something wrong. The good news is that I find the majority of the time it gets things wrong isn't about basic facts, it's about statistics. And so if you simply do a quick scan of the response for a percent sign, you're going to catch about 80 to 85% of, at least in my opinion, of the times when it's hallucinating. And what I do is I actually use perplexity.ai in conjunction. So if I'm writing you an email and it states a statistic, I had one this morning that 65% of people do something, and I forget what it was all about. But I'm like, man, I don't know if I believe that or not. So I took that phrase and I went to perplexity.ai, a different tool, and I said, is this true? And I just pasted in whatever that statement, that statistic was from ChatGPT. And in this case, it came back and said, yes, it is true. And on top of that, it gave me a citation for it. In fact, it gave me 5 citations for it. So now I could, in confidence, leave that in there. It was just an email. I didn't bring the citation, but I'm like, okay, that's true. Other times it just makes things up out of thin air. And you may see 5 studies that say a certain statistic's true, and it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with whatever ChatGPT told you. So I'm a big fan for searching for percent signs and then double checking any statistics that it gives you inside of perplexity.ai. Yes, I know it's another AI model, but it's totally separate from ChatGPT, and it's actually querying the web to find you those citations. So I think that's really important. The other part, like I mentioned, is just proofreading, making sure that it got it right. I've had ChatGPT mess up names for me, especially when I get things more complex. And the only real solution to that, Carl, is to spend more time when you're asking the question. So instead of just asking it a one sentence question, maybe you need to write a paragraph, or you need to give it a little bit more background information so it knows.
Excellent. Yeah. So if you if you don't like your result, ask better questions.
That really makes all the difference in the world. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, let's kind of switch gears here a little bit. One of the questions that's come up with all this AI generated content is how is that going to be viewed in terms of search engine optimization? Is Google going to slap hands for that? There's been a lot of talk about AI checkers
Hmm.
and those types of things, and there's been a lot of discussion in the search engine community about how's this going to affect rankings? What are you coming away with? What are you seeing happening?
Well, I don't sit on the board at Google, so I can't promise you what they're going to do, but I pay a lot of attention to what they're saying. And one of the biggest clues they've given recently, other than they've actually gone on record to say they're not going to penalize AI content, but the most strategic thing to me that I'm relying on, you're probably familiar last year, end of the year, third, fourth quarter, they came out with what was called the helpful content update. And I'm not an SEO expert, so if you are and you're listening to this, I apologize. I know enough to be dangerous when it comes to SEO. But the helpful content update, when it came out, basically said content by humans for humans. Basically, it's going to be written by human and got to be good for humans. They updated that. That is no longer the definition of helpful content that's published by Google. It's now helpful content produced for humans, for people, I think is actually the word they use. And that's really significant when you think about it, because not only was that wasn't just the first thing they came up with, they revised their helpful content definition and removed the fact that it had to be produced by people. Google also told us last year through some releases at the Department of Justice, some lawsuits that are going on, that they actually don't have the ability to analyze our content nearly as well as what we had assumed they did. And so what they're actually doing, according to their internal documents that came out in this court case, they're actually using signals to determine how relevant and how helpful that is. Those are things we've all heard about, things like backlinks and comments and time on page and all that. But part of that process means that they're still looking at those same things. They're not analyzing your content as closely as we thought they used to. And what they're really doing is looking at signals. So if the content you write was written by AI and your audience finds it helpful, they engage with it, they link to it, they talk about it, Google's going to like your content. On the other hand, if I write it personally and it's not very good and it's not well written and it doesn't get time on page and it doesn't get linked to, guess what? Google's not going to pay attention to my content because it's not worried about whether Jonathan wrote it or my version of ChatGPT did. It's worried about, is it helpful to the audience?
Excellent. Well, with that, let's talk through, I know your passion and really what you do, with Whitebeard is helping business owners create this AI-driven content strategy.
Mhm.
And so let's talk a little bit about that because, obviously content is feeding the machine, if you will. That's the driver. But you got to have a strategy behind that. And so, what's been kind of your thrust? What are you seeing? How are you advising clients these days?
Good question. Thanks for asking. So, as you know, I've been in the digital marketing world for a long time. I've earned all of this white hair on my beard. But about a year ago, on October 7th, actually, of last year, 2023, after 3 years of saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and always getting sidetracked, as you know, most agency owners do. We get busy, and so we don't do things. Like most business owners, creating content isn't fun. It's not the easy part. And so it doesn't happen. I decided last October I was no more excuses. I was going to start writing multiple blog posts a week. I was going to do a video every single day, and I was going to go ahead and put up multiple social media posts. This was just before AI came out, and it was fortuitous. I was blessed to be able to think that through because AI has increased the amount of content. So now, do you need to create more content than you did a year ago? The answer is yes, absolutely you do. And it may get slightly lower engagement, but the benefit is we can create so much more helpful content now with AI that you can overall increase it. So if every piece of content gets, say, 70% of the engagement it did last year, but I can create 10 times as much content, it's still helpful. I can get 700% of the engagement I had last year, which is still obviously a benefit. So we work with clients to literally go and check with Google to find out what things does Google want you to talk about in order to be seen as an expert in your niche. If you want to be seen as that go-to expert, regardless of your industry, Google has that data. And as you know, being in the agency space as well, Google sells it to us. They'll tell us what that is. And so we can go and find out, here are the questions. And on average, averages are dangerous, but on average, if we pick a broad topic that you want to be an expert in, I can identify with that somewhere between 300 and 400 questions and topics that Google says they want you to answer in order to be seen as an expert. And then we teach our clients or do it for them to do what we call AI assisted content. I do not believe that AI is at a point that you can just say, here's the topic and here's what I want to say and create that content. It's not going to do a good job at it. But you can prompt it well. You can then allow AI to write it and you can proofread it, and you can create content in probably about 20 to 25% of the time that we could a year ago and still have that be good, helpful content. And that's what your audience is looking for, because when you start creating written content and then video content based on that and social media content based on that, that is going to get not only Google's attention, but your audience's attention as well. And I got to say, being in sales, there's nothing like getting on a sales call, Carl, and having somebody go, Jonathan, I feel like I know you because I've been seeing your videos. How do I work with you? As opposed to, all right, I signed up for the sales call. Why should I talk to you? Very different perspective. And as you know from conversations we've had, I've built my current agency that I started just 4 months ago based upon the whole fact that people are coming to me as an expert in my niche asking how they can work with me as opposed to why they should listen to me. And that's made just a world of difference. And it can do that for anybody, regardless of your niche.
Absolutely. I'm glad you pointed that out, because one of the things that this we deal with this in our clients is helping them really understand this attraction marketing model, that when you become
Hmm.
the expert, everybody wants to work with the expert. It's no longer a discussion of do you have the lowest price or any of those things. You're an expert, and people are willing to pay for that expertise because they want to work with the best. And so I love this strategy, and I'm glad we got a chance to kind of talk about it. And just to break that down, you kind of gave a little glimpse there. You're taking long form content and then you're
Hmm.
repurposing that multiple venues, multiple
Absolutely.
platforms. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We begin by writing written long form articles or blog posts. So our recommendation really simply is 15 blog posts every single month. And I know people are going, "You're crazy. I'm not getting one out now." No, you need to do it. But then that results in 15 to 30 video scripts based upon that article. And then we're going to leverage that into social media posts, and we're going to turn that into, on average, 3 social media posts per article. So if you've ever been on Facebook or Instagram, LinkedIn, any place like that, and you've seen a post, got a good hook, a great title, got your attention, maybe had the first sentence or summary, and then it had a link to read the rest of the article. Those are the type of social media posts we're creating, because what happens is two things. One, it drives more traffic to that article, does what we call amplifying that, and that's important. The other thing that it does, and this is a great trick if you haven't learned this already, you can share content on social media that supports your position and your beliefs and get credit for it even if you didn't write it. So, Carl, if you write an article that I think is spot on, I can go share that on my LinkedIn profile and link to your article. And I still get credit with my audience for having, maybe not for written it, but for being an expert in that field because I shared that information. So now on top of sharing your great content, I'm also sharing the content that I've written or I've written with AI. We call it AI assisted. And I'm able to put that content out there. And because it's targeted again now, and notice I didn't say keywords, not that keywords are irrelevant, but we're not trying to just get, the best chiropractor in Indianapolis. We're targeting on, if in that example, everything about chiropractic care, and making sure that when that chiropractor is writing, they're not just talking about being the best chiropractor or the most trained chiropractor, but they're answering all of these questions that their audience is asking. So when somebody in Indianapolis says, chiropractors near me, or who's the best, their website automatically comes up. And because of Google's new EEAT model for expertise and authority and all of that, I won't go into the whole details. That's a whole nother discussion. But we're even finding that the social media posts that you make, Carl, help Google create that web of authenticity to validate who you are. Your Facebook post is never going to show up in search engine results. But I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe solidly that Facebook and that LinkedIn post that you make are signals to Google that they're indexing those and they're going, wow, Carl wrote this article, he did a video, and now he's posted. Guess what? I can now validate that Carl's real because he's had this LinkedIn profile for 7 years and he's posted consistently. And now that's going to increase your credibility. So that article you wrote and everything else is going to appear higher and be more likely to be ranked by Google where your audience is going to see it.
Excellent. Now, as we talk about that, that brings up an interesting topic: AI assisted content. So who really owns that? Is that mine? Is that the AI platform? I was even thinking about images created with Dalle.
Mhm.
Are those copyrighted images from the platform? How do we give proper attribution to AI assisted content?
It's a great question, and one that hasn't been settled in the courts yet. So there is no definitive answer. My recommendation to my clients is simple. I recommend that you add something to the footer of your website, letting them know that this amazing content that you're reading on this website was created in conjunction or in collaboration with AI. It was human prompted, it was human directed, but AI was part of that process. I think that's an important disclosure to make. As far as copyrights, the courts haven't said yet. We don't know. So as a business person, I'm using Midjourney for most of my images primarily because I can buy a license from them. Will it hold up in court down the road? I don't know. But I know as a business owner, I can take the fact that I can rely on a statement being made to me and the fact that I'm exchanging something of value, my money for their services, that I have at least I think, a fairly strong leg to stand on and use those images. Does that mean that the image that I've used and created nobody else can use? I don't know. I just have, believe it or not, in this virtual world, I finally decided to print business cards up because I've been going to enough events to speak that I need business cards. And I used one of my Midjourney images on my business card. Is it possible that you could use that? Yeah. Can I stop you? Probably not. But here's the key. It took me over 400 iterations to get the image that I wanted to put on my business card. I would dare say that one, nobody knows the exact prompts I used or is going to take the time to replicate that exactly. And therefore, it's much like a picture. If I decided to take a picture and somebody else wanted to use a similar concept and take their own picture, I can't stop them from doing that. So when it comes to imagery in particular, I don't have a great answer for you, Carl, but I don't believe the risk is significant to us as business owners. If you've ever used a stock image, I'll never forget the first day. Years ago, I started my agency originally as a web design agency 13 years ago before I started Whitebeard Strategies. And I'll never forget driving down the highway about 2 years after we started, and I saw a billboard that had the exact same image that I had used as the header image on my agency website. And I remember going, they can't do that. And now I remembered, oh, I'd licensed that from stock photography. So they could do that. So nothing stopped them from doing that, didn't change anything. Chances are very few people that saw that billboard were looking at my website and probably ever realized there was anything similar there as well. So if you're not Disney or Pixar or somebody like that, I don't think it's probably relevant to most of us as business owners today to be too concerned about that.
Excellent. And then let's, kind of land the plane here. What are the current best practices? What are, if you were to name off probably the top 2 or 3 things that you think a business owner really needs to just make that part of their practice when dealing with AI? What would those be?
That's good. Um, we give this off the top of my head, so I reserve the right to change my mind. But at the moment, I think when you're dealing with AI, keep in mind that just like an employee, it does seem to have a mind of its own. So we used to joke that just because Abraham Lincoln quoted it on the internet doesn't mean it's true. Eh, Just because ChatGPT said it doesn't mean it's true. Validate statistics. You're writing content or creating content, whether that be SOPs or anything else, about things that you're an expert in. Take the time to take a quick look. Even when I write an SOP, I've got ADD, so I'm not good at details, but I'm really good at putting together a bulleted list to say, here's how I should do something. Now I can give that to ChatGPT and have it create a extensive and fairly comprehensive SOP based on that. It fills in the gaps for me, but I still read through it to make sure it filled the gaps in the right way. And I know people go, oh, but I wanted it to be easy. I'm like, well, compared to writing an SOP a year ago, it's a lot easier. AI is an easy-er button. It's not the easy button that one of the office supply chain stores, gave that red easy button. It's not the easy button. It's the easy-er button. Don't expect it to understand what's in your head if you haven't told it. And the reality is we can't tell it everything that's in our mind. So just understand it's like talking to another person on your team. They only know so much and use it appropriately to do that. But I highly encourage you to leverage it to save time, increase those margins, and best of all, provide more value to your clients to convince them why they should spend more time with you and more money with you instead of possibly looking for the competition because their groceries are costing them more too.
Excellent, excellent. And then, Jonathan, where can somebody connect with you? I certainly want to highlight the Facebook group. I think that's a great place. If you could talk about that for a minute, and then how else can they connect with you?
Thank you for that, Carl. I appreciate it. You can reach out to me at jonathanmast.com/linktree. It's got access to all of the stuff that you probably want. So it's just my name, jonathanmast.com/linktree, and it'll give you everything you need. I do run a great Facebook group if you're interested in learning about AI. As of this morning, we're almost over 20,000 entrepreneurs in that group. If you want to learn about prompting, you want to get tips and tricks, it's totally free. Go ahead. You can find that on my Linktree page. Just join that group, and there's tons of value in there. And again, if you want to message me, you want to reach out, I'm widely available. My phone number and everything's on my website. Give me a call, reach out, send me an email. I'd love to add value and teach you how to use AI to really help leverage it for your business.
Fantastic. And then, Jonathan, any final parting thoughts that you have for us?
Get started now. It's not too late. I just talked to somebody the other day, Carl, and they're like, "Oh, I missed the AI boat." And I'm like, "No, the boat hasn't even left the dock yet. It's there, but it hasn't left the dock yet." We're going to see so many changes in 2024. Don't be afraid of AI. It's not a fad. It's not going away. It's time to embrace it and use it, because if you don't, your competition will, and that'll make them more productive than you.
Excellent. Well, Jonathan, thank you for being our guest today. And to our audience, I hope you'll take a lot of gold nuggets here. I hope you made some notes. You can always come back, re-listen, take more notes. But this is a great place. Jonathan, I'm sure we'll have you back as things continue to evolve.
I'd love to.
Lots of questions, and certainly appreciate you being with us.
Anytime. Thank you for the invitation, Carl. It's been a pleasure.